Okay, good morning. It's the Friday morning again. Brittany didn't make it, and we figure that she's involved with her husband, her children, or her chickens, or something's held her up. But here we have Sandra and Sandra Gentry, and we were gonna start by talking about, well, Robert Kennedy has been running on this issue of public health crisis and of chronic illness, which is, we've known about that for a long time. A lot of people have. I don't know how it's not, people aren't kicking and screaming about it. But every time I post
I think they're too busy trying to survive. Trying to raise their special need kids or just make it through another day, you know?
Yeah. Well, anytime I post on Twitter, I say, look, this is mercury. Only mercury explains all this shit. And they go, oh no, it's not mercury, it's aluminum, you know? So I want to talk about that because, you know, I always think that aluminum is a bit of a red herring, but I don't know.
I agree.
Yeah, okay, you agree too, because aluminum doesn't explain. If you look up the symptom profile for aluminum, like there's 3 or 4 things, you know, like it gives you heart attacks and it gives you Alzheimer's.
Can give you kidney damage, can give you neurological damage. Yeah, the Alzheimer's connection.
Yeah, there's a few things, but it's not like mercury with 250 symptoms, you know, with the fibromyalgia and the chronic fatigue and the HP axis messed up and the autoimmune diseases and everything that mercury does. That just explains this whole panoply of disaster. And
it connects things. Aluminum and mercury can have a connection.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Big connection. That the mercury impairs the actual removal of aluminum.
Yeah.
And then you don't realize you have mercury toxicity, but the aluminum keeps on accumulating to toxic levels and where it will show up on a test. And then it's like, oh, this is high. This means I'm high in this element. This is my toxicity.
That's it. Yeah.
When actually mercury is.
Yeah. Well, it's a deranged mineral transport situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And Andy said you do not need a specific chelator for the purpose of removing aluminum for the body. You focus on the big bad guy, which is the mercury hiding in the shadows in a way. When we look at hair tests, a lot of times it shows up low. So when any kind of practitioner, allopathic practitioner, even naturopaths, they look at these tests, and if something says low on a test, they think it means low in the body. So the analytical stuff Andy has done with those hair tests, I think that is groundbreaking. And yes, it's been around for what, 25 years now. Well, amalgam illness was published in 1999. So this happened in the mid-90s that he started looking online, basically peer-based stuff, talking and kind of tracking people, and those who got better were the ones who took the ALA on this stringent schedule of every 3 hours, or the DMSA every 4 hours or more frequently. Yeah. So and then the man had the brain, having his PhD in chemistry, to wade through papers and say, okay, this is a safe use of this substance, of the ALA. And then tracking the people getting better. Oh, they got better. And then the next thing was the aluminum. He wrote about it even. So it's a small kind of thing, but it speaks to this will be removed from the body once sufficient mercury has been removed. You get the mercury out, you improve the mineral transport, and then the body can excrete the aluminum without any specialty
It seems, I
whatever.
think what he says in the book is, like if you don't have mercury clogging everything up, it just, you just get rid of the aluminum. I mean, that's not that you want to go,
Exactly. It's not even a heavy metal. It's a light alkali metal.
It's a what?
And the only aluminum is not, chemically speaking, a heavy metal. It's a light alkali metal.
Oh,
Bauxite is the natural form. It's a rock. So it never comes in this refined form. Like when we think of, aluminum foil and shiny and silver, it doesn't appear like that in nature. And we have no biological use for it, but we can remove it because it is a light metal.
But
It's not a
this
heavy one.
sort of started when the pharma manufacturers, in that excess of caution, removed thimerosal supposedly from the product that must not be named schedule. And everybody believed that, or like the narrative control.
Which is funny because we know that both preservatives, they're used as preservatives, right? But both mercury and aluminum can incite an immune response. And that's the point of having a vaccine, is to incite an immune response.
An adjuvant. They never say it's used as a preservative. It was the mercury, they say.
Adjuvant or something. The adjuvant. It's an adjuvant.
The immune response.
They add it. It's basically like a filler in a vaccine. If the active ingredient is the killed off virus or the, disabled, whatever, non-pathogenic genetic code bit of whatever pathogen you want to vaccinate against,
antigen,
adding these metals, the aluminum, it basically increases the immune response to it. It's kind of like MSG in the food world, okay? You use a little bit of real seasoning, pepper and whatever you want in your things, and you add the MSG, you just need a tiny amount of salt now, and it tastes, because of the presence of the SMG, you're amplifying both the pepper and the salt taste. And it's similar with vaccines, that you have this anti-gene, you want to have the pathogen, the killed off whatever. Excuse me.
You want an immune reaction to that. I heard it described once.
But to have the minimal amount of that, that's the expensive part, right? Creating this active ingredient, the antigen bit, and adding the aluminum makes it so you do not need a whole bunch of it, just a little bit. And then the aluminum is kind of like, it's almost like a catalyst to get the immune response to actually ramp up enough so you develop immunity, and not just a ho-hum reaction.
I thought that it wouldn't work unless they put, okay, do you think they could? Well, anyway, what I had it described to me once as, you've got this tiger in a cage, and that's your immune system, and you throw a chicken in there, that's the antigen, the tiger goes, and then you squirt the tiger in the eye, you throw a chicken and squirt it in the eye with pepper spray, and that tiger freaks out, attacks the chicken, and tears it to pieces. And that's Yeah.
It's the thing that triggers
they don't need to, if they could make products that must not be named without the aluminum, what's it called? My brain's
adjuvant.
Without they could
right. It basically enhances. I think the medical lingo is something like enhances the immune response. Right. Like you want to have things, and think of it from a production perspective. If I can use, I don't know, 0.5% of whatever antigen part and just a tiny bit of the aluminum, versus using, I don't know, 1% of the active ingredient. And these are illustrative numbers. I have no clue what actually goes into the contents. I'm sure they're proprietary too. How much exactly do they use? But the point is, they can use less to create the same reaction you would get with a higher amount. Like for a tiger, you throw them, I don't know, a big chunk, a beef leg in there, or a goat piece. they would go for it maybe faster than trying to get the feathers off the chicken, right?
We
So
threw a
now
chicken
that you've
nugget. We threw a
exactly,
chicken
you
nugget and hit it with pepper spray.
right. Well, and it may not even go for the chicken. It may just
The point is that
totally avoid it, but
the adjuvant is a poison.
it's a
And they-
catalyst, and
yeah.
it can be a synergistic poison. It can if the aluminum is injected into somebody who has mercury toxicity but is unaware of it, and then the aluminum ends up accumulating. They're eating
Yeah.
commercially
I'm
made
saying that
muffins and
the
pastries.
adjuvant works
It
because
can
it's a poison.
accumulate some.
The adjuvant works because it's a poison, so the immune system's freaking out because it's seeing a poison
Well,
coming.
it's creating a reaction. Yeah,
And mercury
it's a
actually
foreign thing
same
to the
thing.
body.
And I've actually
Right.
read articles saying that mercury was always a stealth adjuvant. They got it in there saying it's a preservative, but since they took it out, they've had to up the other stuff.
Well, I believe that it's a preservative. Wasn't it used like that in the contact lens solution to keep it basically from becoming contaminated with bacteria?
Well, it's
I
supposed
mean, so it will kill anything. It's an antibiotic, as in against life. It's destroying things, it's keeping bacteria from multiplying, but it's also keeping our little mammal cells from being healthy, because it's creating oxidative stress and reactive oxygen species.
everything it does. Yeah. So we've established in this, we think, like, folks who are listening to this, aluminum is not.
Well, and it became a huge marketing thing. I mean, first it was, oh, try this thing and it'll do this. We can detox aluminum doing this. And it's like, what was it, ADM? It was the foot bath for years. And that stuff has been coming back since the 90s, any kind of detox through the soles of the feet. And I'm thinking,
What does that
okay,
do? I saw a video of a cat.
it makes you feel good when you have your foot bath. Maybe it's relaxing,
Yeah, but
but I don't believe that it
for
removes
points. No. I saw a
No, it
video
does
on
not
YouTube where they
remove
put a
the
carrot
aluminum.
in one of those things and it produced the same as if you use your feet.
Right. I've seen one where they only put water in there and it discolored, and it's like, well, the color change is not a proof of anything. That just means the electrodes are exchanging, causing oxidation of one electrode, and then you have the little iron bits floating in the water. It's like
Not heavy metal.
It's just people want to do something to
we're
help.
talking about molecules, like you only need a few of them to mess up your entire health. You think that's going to show when it comes
Right.
to your feet?
No, it's not going to be little iron oxide bits in your foot bath water. That's not it. I mean, maybe it really cleaned under the toenails, I mean, got the last of the dirt out and bits. But yeah, so aluminum is a concern. The medical community knows when there are preemie babies and they need all these IV tubing things. They're aware of the inside of those tubes is lined with I don't know what the actual product is. It's a aluminum based, basically bacteriostatic to keep bacteria from growing. And like, let's say you have a preemie that has a feeding tube, right? Goes into their tummy. They need that tube into their stomach to get the calories they need. Wait, I don't know if it was a feeding tube or if it was TPN, the basically IV version of just nutrients. But some of this tubing, they're aware of this. This has, the potential to transfer some aluminum through to the body, and they're aware of it being a nephrotoxicity concern for preemies. So then it's like, if you have a bigger body weight, a little amount of aluminum in a healthy body is not going to accumulate to toxic levels. The body can clear it.
Yeah.
But then preemie babies, they already are premature. Their organs aren't as mature. So it ends up hurting their kidneys potentially. And then you still think, well, I want my kid to be alive and deal with other stuff later, So, and I don't even know if parents are aware of this at the time, or if it's, the medical community is aware of it. I've read about it in papers where I'm like, okay, this is known.
One
But
thing,
it's the thing that it's the dose makes the poison in that case a whole lot more than
hold on.
mercury.
Change the subject here. One thing that Andy died before this scientist, Christopher Exley, did all his research on aluminum. I don't know if have you read any of his stuff?
Not too much. I know
Capable of
he's very
evaluating it.
dogged about the aluminum being the issue.
Yeah,
But
that's
like I said, I think he fails to see past the aluminum to what else do these people where this is occurring have in common. And I guarantee you, if we get 100 people who swear up and down, my test results are all high aluminum,
they've
my
all got it.
children, this,
Yeah.
that, the other, and then you get a hair test, the doctor's data hair test, and
You
we would
see,
look at it
yeah,
and we would account for the fact, what kind of supplements are they taking? Because usually it's not just we're treating the aluminum, they're trying to have a super healthy diet. They're already giving some supplements. And then if you take all that into consideration and you look at the hair test, guaranteed. I mean, at least 80% of those people, if not more, will outright meet accounting rule. And you can tell them, by the way, this is mercury. You're chasing the wrong thing. Like you said earlier, red herring.
Hold on, Sandra. One thing he did that Christopher Exley did was he got custody of brain samples from autistic kids, and he looked at them and he found aluminum in all of them. So I actually communicated with him, and I asked him, did you check those for mercury too? And he hadn't done that because he's, like a one metal guy. Yeah.
Well, he's focused on it, and I understand it. This is a groundbreaking thing that he proved that this basically for man-made substance, like I said, aluminum does not exist in this pure form
Right.
outside of being refined from bauxite. So for it to be there, it shouldn't be there. But then my question is, what makes the blood-brain barrier open, able for the aluminum to cross that blood-brain barrier? And we know this is again where the mercury comes in. We know mercury damages things. So
he has a whole theory about it being carried into the brain by, some parts of the immune system. But I'm not, qualified to really understand that.
explain it. I haven't delved into it because I'm thinking, okay, whatever you found, it's like saying, I found the ticking bomb. I want you to go like Minesweeper. You didn't just find one bomb. Now you got to find the others around it, and you got to decide which one is the one that sets them all off.
Right. And I don't think
And that's what I look at as the mercury is the mother of all bombs, the big atomic one.
yeah.
And if you
elephant in the
ignore
room.
the effects of it and
Yeah.
you think it's some other catastrophe, but it's really one we can address, okay?
We can address it, and it's not even that hard to get rid of. As I just did a video, I said it takes discipline, and it takes some faith that you understand what you're doing, and it takes a little
Organizing yourself to make this
discipline, and you can do
happen.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it takes a doggedness and just, a certain level actually of still having cognitive capacity to sequence out, putting out the supplements, putting out, prepping yourself for the success and not just
being able
saying,
to follow the protocol.
I don't know what to do. It's like, no, you do one thing. I love when Alan Down in when he talks about just, focus on one thing, break it down into steps. It's the same in the coaching world. With that joke about how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. It's huge, right? You're not going to do it all at once.
Yeah, I always
But
try to
once you
get people-
chunk it,
yeah, like
you get on board, you get your supplements going, and then you're like, okay, I got the chelator ready. I pick a weekend, I start this, and it's like a whole lot of faith too, yes. And knowing why you're doing it. I mean,
it's very
motivation is always important.
Even for people with a technical background. I remember Andy telling me that, because once I was traveling with a friend in Canada, and we stopped at his sister's house, and she had one of these grown adult kids living in the basement with, an advanced degree, can't hold a job. And like he's the like the lone wolf archetype that you came up with that archetype, actually. And I thought, yeah, that's right. That's the guy in the basement, can't hold a job and is, researching his symptoms all the time. He was brilliant, but he was
The health anxiety, the social anxiety, I mean, all of it comes out in certain
well,
types,
he
yeah.
thought that he had fluoride toxicity, that he had this exposure to fluoride and that set it off and something like that. And I talked to Andy about it. He said, even very sophisticated people miss this, even people who have a technical background and the whole everything.
Because the marketing is so pervasive that it's something else. How many products right now can we look at that will tell you this stuff will detox aluminum? Just buy this product. It's easy, blah, blah, blah. And along comes Andy says, you know what? You can take this ALA stuff, some antioxidants, and you do it every 3 hours on a strict schedule. And people go, I don't want hard. I want easy. It's like, oh,
Is going to the dentist and spending
I want
thousands
safe.
of
I want
dollars
it
getting a
safe for
teeth
my
remedy.
children.
What did you say?
I said I want it safe for my children and for myself too.
Yeah, I don't know why some people just look at this. I got that book. I ordered it. I don't know how it happened. It was like God's grace, that I got this. I read it, and I just knew that it was right. I just knew what he was saying was.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It and it's technical enough for me to say, yeah, the guy dug into this stuff to figure this out. He
Yep.
translated it into fairly plain people language there, when he talks about the hair test of how elevated stuff does not represent or does represent body burden. Like he
Yeah.
goes very step by step for each metal. He's got it laid out pretty well. It's overwhelming looking when you first look at the topic, but he's got it sequenced pretty well.
Differently. One of my friends said, like, reading this book is sort of like reading scripture.
Ah, okay.
Like it's like
it's dense. I mean,
over
it's
and over
just
again. It doesn't think in, and then all of a sudden, because I had some sort of like personal experience of the situation. All of a sudden, it it becomes clear what he's saying.
right. It's all profound stuff. It's not just it's not fluff. I want to say it's
not fluff.
It's best taken in small doses. Micro learning, yeah.
That
And he took that into consideration. I mean, he really took it into consideration, I think, for his final book to make it more formulaic and shorter and graphics and the little bullet points. I like that little.
He just wanted to write a book, any topic. He said, write it on any topic you want. And I thought, a little pamphlet, would to explain, how to do this, because it was all over the place, wasn't really laid out any place clearly. But then we came up with this. But I'm glad we got that done before he died. That was completely done.
You got to be with him and finish editing. That must have been hard.
From hanging out with Andy. Yeah, because I'm a French major.
But you have the gift with words to explain things so people can understand, where his technical thing, if he said a specific word and then people go, I don't know what that means, and then they ignore it. You know what I mean? I'm like, you have to define the words.
I have that advantage of not having a technical background. So like, he just say things and assume everybody knows that. But I never even took a class in chemistry. I did physics in high school and college. And so I was able to take, like I had to ask him, what the hell does this mean? And then he'd explain it to me. Finally, I'd understand it, and then I could express it for.
Right. And that's your gift of, the synergy between the two of you, that you took his technicality and explained it in a way that is easier for people who grasp it differently or don't have the background in it to just explain it. Yeah. Yeah. Not assuming a background knowledge is good. Like, where are you at in your understanding? There should be levels.
They're so prejudiced. They're just completely stuck.
Right. It's a bias of
MDs,
assuming
the
others
MDs
know
really
what we
coming
know.
out with the MDs lately, like the MDs are just disgracing themselves left and right recently during this whole, disaster that we just went through, and showing their, complete lack. Well, he always said that MDs are liberal arts majors who think they're got technical backgrounds but don't.
Right. He said it switched from taking the more science-oriented majors to liberal arts because of a better bedside manner. But what you need is, I think you need a caring doctor, right? Good bedside manner. You need somebody who cares genuinely, and you need somebody who knows and can analyze these little bits of symptoms you have, because it takes both. An AI can be programmed to look at blood tests and determine what the most likely things are and just, start the differential diagnosis stuff. But a doctor can look at you. I've had a doctor literally look at me and say, and I was there for a prescription for steroids to be renewed. I had moved to the area. I'm like, I have an adrenal condition. And she said, and I will prescribe thyroid medication for you because you have a thyroid condition. And she knew the signs and symptoms. She
Yes.
could look at me and she knew without having to order the blood test. She ordered the blood test, but she also on the spot prescribed it. And I was just like, how did you know? Like,
Like
okay,
that is a
you look this
doctor.
up. Yeah, there are signs and symptoms.
The
And I
clinical
apologize for my voice.
experience they have sank in, Yeah.
Right, to where they have a view. They have the experience of having seen it before in people. It was this, yeah, she knew what was happening there. Whether or not she experienced it herself didn't matter, but she knew the clinical signs, and that was enough
I've been
to
reading.
say, all right, Michael Lamb.
Have you read this?
I have not.
There's no mercury mentioned in this whole huge index, so I don't think he believes in that, but it's a very interesting book.
Right.
This is
And
the
I mean,
main
even
thing
I remember when adrenal fatigue syndrome was looked at as something this is just what patients call themselves.
Well, that's still true.
Anything doctors cannot explain one-to-one, this causes this. Multi-causality trips people up, but I think there are very few things that are monocausal. I mean, I can be exposed to the flu. That does not equate infection, right?
No.
It's the thing is here, the exposure is here. But if my immune system is up to par and just squashes this thing before it causes any infection, well, guess what? I'm not going to think I was ever exposed. I don't even know. So, it's not just having this in your bubble will cause an issue. It's what other factors factor into this for something to become a problem.
That, though. A lot of people
Well, and the fear alone of being infected will stress you out and make you weaker mentally, and then your immune system will follow suit. I mean, it's all connected. The stress alone lowers immunity. Sugar lowers immunity. I mean, there are factors there we can identify, but it's more complicated than just A plus B equals C. There are some factors you don't even know about that factor into the end result C.
Well, the elephant in the room is this stuff. It really is. Hey guys, this is the elephant in the room. I was going to change the subject here, but like my Buddhist friends all dumped me during COVID because I was non-compliant and didn't buy into their thing. Can you imagine your Buddhist buddy?
Was it a thing of more collective safety is more important than individual freedom?
Into the whole.
I think it's a cultural thing.
Yeah. Well, look, it certainly is a cultural thing for these highly educated, intellectual, like university types, which is what mostly the Buddhists are. But years ago, I saw I
know somebody who I believe is Buddhist, and he's a very young person, and he's just the sweetest, kindest person. And the job he has, lots of people in retail can get kind of jaded or just doing the perfunctory, right? But when he asks you, how are you doing? It feels more genuine than other cashiers. And
How was he on the lockdowns and all that crap and masks?
I mean, the store workers wore the masks anyway, because yeah, you have hundreds of people coming through, breathing on you, putting this in the air. Yeah, I mean, I thought there were situations where it made sense. I mean, it's like, yeah,
Well,
I
anyway,
didn't like it at the beginning. I thought it
these-
made everybody psychologically scared of each other because we couldn't read faces very well.
but anyway, what I was going to tell was these two famous teachers who both have, some kind of awful, neurological problems like Lou Gehrig's disease, both of them, something like that. And they're both, failing and dying and carrying on. And, in the Buddhist thought that it's, old age, like he said, you have to accept that there's old age, sickness, and death.
And life and suffering, life is suffering is like the whole premise, right?
Life is really suffering. That's a mistranslation a bit. It's sort of like life is a little bit, uneaseful. But you have to accept old age, sickness, and death. So these guys are busy accepting their sickness. And that I just look at that and think it would just really upset me because there's old age, sickness, and death. Yes, I'll accept that. I'm 70.
Turn it off, sweetie. Thank you.
I'm 75 now. I'm dealing with it, but old age, sickness, and death, and being poisoned are something else. Like you don't have to accept being poisoned.
Chronological age and biological age are two different things. So I think the mercury is like speeding up the biological clock, and removing it is, dialing it back a bit. So I'd rather dial it back as much as I can. My grandmother is 90 and walks faster than some younger adults in their 30s, maybe, or 20s.
Germany? Where's
your grandma? And I'm like, I want to be like her when I'm not in my 90s. So I'm thinking, well, I do have some of the genetic component that would allow me to get this old. Clearly, I'm working on getting the mercury out. I got to take care of my body.
Every person in my family died of dementia. So,
Oh,
yeah. Well,
but you feel like you have an explanation. You have something, you have a lever, you have leverage there by removing the heavy metals. I mean, clearly.
Well, I was already getting dementia in my 60s. My daughter told me that. She's like a professional dealing with elderly people. And they said, oh, you're getting early onset dementia, which my brother got too. And I don't feel that I got any dementia going on now. I'm a lot older than that. So yeah, getting the mercury out put paid to that. But my grandmother died. My mother died with Alzheimer's. My grandmother died with Alzheimer's. My brother died with Alzheimer's. Like we're really susceptible to mercury in our family.
Right.
My father had Asperger's syndrome, and he popped off in his 80s. He sort of faded away. Yeah, so that's mercury. That's a genetic susceptibility to retain mercury.
I remember the rivers of mercury running through families. It's like, yes, this is what it is for people, Once you have the awareness, you can go back in your lineage and see it, and it kind of all makes sense then.
Oh my God, that was such an epiphany for me when I found that chart in hair test interpretation. There's a chart showing the family connections. I said,
right.
This stuff run in families, like I started thinking
it does
in families. And yeah, it clearly runs in families, and it's not the Alzheimer's disease, it's genetic.
It's the propensity to
detox, it is genetic. Yeah.
It's the clearance of mercury that is not as high for others in an ever increasingly polluted world. So
it is an ever increasing polluted world. Well, I'm here in a village in Jamaica, and everybody's you look around and people, I see toxic people, but on the whole, people have a level of health in the country.
Vibrancy.
Vibrancy is what you see. You just see them bopping down the road there, with their machetes.
And the physical activity helps too.
And they all want to go
fresh food,
earn money. I said, be careful going to the States, You sure you want to go there? Ruin your health?
Right?
Get 13 products that must not be named to get even allowed in there? Jesus. Well, they can handle it. I mean, that when my husband, applied for his
Had to.
like 30
Yeah.
fucking things, and I asked Andy about it. He said, well, it's not really that much, and unless you see something, just let it be. And I haven't seen anything, so.
Right.
Oh,
And that's the thing. I mean, having lived what we've lived through, it does make us a bit gun shy, I think.
yep.
But yeah, there are moments where, okay, I remember coming for immigration purposes to the US, I had to get some as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I had
That was a while ago, right?
yeah, he was under 2, so he was like 15, 16 months when I was prepping to finalize stuff for my visa. Maybe more like December or so. Like, yeah, it was like 17, something around that 15-month time frame. And I had him with me, and they did a test for rubella titers.
Okay, at least
And well, no, the rubella teeter was during my pregnancy, and it was low. So the doctor said, before you have another baby, make sure you get a booster for that. So having that knowledge at that moment, not knowing about the damages, the dangerous part of vaccines yet, young mom about to immigrate to the US, I told them during my physical for immigration, got my x-ray, my lungs are clear, I don't have TB. I told them, you have to show your vaccine history. And I told them, yes, I got what is it? It's the 3 MMR. But I have low rubella titers. I don't mind repeating it. Like, I figured it was the one-stop shop in that moment. Just get it over and done with. Because we did want another child. So I knew we were going to try to conceive. I'm like, okay, if I can knock this out here, we're good, we're done. And then, yeah, so it's a whole lot different for an adult body size to get some vaccines than for a fraction of that weight in a baby package, There's a big difference there in that factor alone. So that's part of the risk. I mean, we know that about the MMR for African American boys, that it's better to wait until they're older. Guess what? If they're a year older, they weigh a whole lot more at that young age, So there are things that can be done to do this whole risk mitigation thing and say,
you can do that.
you need this
There's a lot of
particular
pediatricians
vaccine.
that do
This
that.
is the safest way to do it. And I mean, Dr. Sears was harangued for that in California. The younger one,
Yeah.
it was horrible. They ran him off, basically.
We're trying to make it safer. Yeah.
Right. For informing people. Transparency creates trust. If Andy had said, oh, ALA can cure everybody, he wouldn't have been believable. But he wasn't a marketing man. He was somebody who said ALA removes arsenic and mercury, and it's a great antioxidant if you're lead toxic. He didn't just claim everybody everything. He was very specific. And that's what I appreciated. When I started reading the actual book, I was like, okay, this makes sense. This is.
How did you blunder onto it? Like,
I Googled.
What?
I walked through the Fort Hood Library and found this book. It was propped up on a shelf.
What?
Dr. Kenneth Bach's book about, it was called the 4A, or it is called the 4A, the new childhood epidemics, ADHD, autism, allergies, and something else with an A. And in it, with the autism came the connection to heavy metals, came the connection, and as the first book I read the word chelation in. And once I had that, plus the fact that my husband said, don't just go get our kid diagnosed. I don't want the stigma attached to him. I said, okay, can do. And I said, well, what can we do on our own? And that's why I Googled. I'm like, and that's how I stumbled upon the Yahoo group at the time.
Yeah, I found the Yahoo group too.
And it was called Autism Mercury with the
Autism.
dash in between.
Yeah,
That was the one for kids.
yeah,
And then FDC, frequent dose chelation, was the adult group. And yeah, that's when I kind of dove in, learned the lingo, and yeah, it's like getting
I
a,
remember you saying,
a
"What's this
extra
word,
biochemistry
mineral
knowledge.
transport they're talking about?" Took me a while to figure that out. And then I
Right. I'm like, what does deranged even mean? I'm like, if somebody's deranged, you're calling them crazy or something. But it's no, actually out of range, right? Like this thing is not in the normal range. Like,
not in the
yeah,
normal ranges.
it means something.
Look at it and
Yeah.
see that now.
Yeah.
Look at a hair test now, it's just obvious.
Yeah, it's like you get an eye for it. Having seen so many, you can see the patterns, and it's like, okay, yes, I can count it, but I can also tell you this looks mighty suspicious even without counting.
Yeah, you don't even have to count. This is just suspicious. Yeah.
It's like, boom, it's tilting one way or the other, or just, yeah, you can tell.
Or the aluminum's really, really high. Yeah.
Yeah, and the mercury is really, really low.
That's just a like a risk factor right there when you see that high. It's a specific.
Well, and you can ask, are they exposed to it on a regular basis? What's your kid eating if it's a child or something, you know? You can cut out certain processed foods, you know? I think I mentioned the muffin-y deals earlier, commercially made pastries, pre-made pastries. I mean, baked goods have it, you know, the aluminum was a pyrophosphate. There's like an aluminum compound used in a commercial baking powder.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, sometimes I look in people's, when I'm in the supermarket, I'll just look over in people's carts and see my
Cart judgment.
what are you eating? I see that here too. When I go into the supermarket here, I see these mothers, like buying all this junk food.
Well, and sweet, savory, and greasy are like these primal tastes that that's comfort food. I mean, it's just, we can't escape our biology. We just need to moderate it and, can't eat the bag of chips every day.
You can eat lard and schmaltz and coconut oil.
See, I mean, that's what I remember my grandma making.
That's why
sourdough bread, schmaltz with it even had the grieben in it, the tiny bits of basically the pork skin or whatever, the granular, the proteiny bits that are left when you fry bacon yourself. I mean, render the lard. There are tiny bits in there, and then yeah. And think of it, it has fat, it has the carbs and the sourdough, and it even has a little bit sweet if you chew that stuff long enough. Because it's bread.
Well, we've been at this.
And it has savory usually in the schmaltz.
I think we can, any final remarks you'd like to make? We started on aluminum, but we got some interesting stuff in
Well, I think it bears repeating that the aluminum is a secondary thing a lot of times, and that you get a benefit from going after the mercury, and then it's apparent that, oh, I was after the wrong thing, and it's just, I'm grateful you're putting this knowledge out there, I got to say that much.
I'm looking for my 15 minutes of fame, and I'm also looking to actually get this knowledge out there,
Right. And I think getting the knowledge out there is what motivates me. I'm like, people need to know. If nobody tells you in your whatever social circle, maybe you bounce into it on the interwebs, and there's credible information out there.
Okay, so long. I'm going to close this.